creeps! Anna here, and today I wanted to talk about the movie Old, specifically all of the plot holes that I could find in the film. Now, just so we're clear, I'm not trying to be rude or discredit anybody's form of art, but I think that there are some plot holes that I would like to discuss with you guys, and we can, have an argument respectfully in the comments whether or not you agree with me or not. And maybe you guys can explain some of these away, and some of them actually the second time I watched the film were explained away, so that is a possibility. I actually did like this film, and so at the very end of this video, I'm gonna tell you the reasons why I actually did like it. So hopefully you know that this is not a video just disrespecting all the people that worked on this film. It's just one of those movies that I cannot get off my mind. And so yeah, here we are. I have a whole lot of notes to get through, so let's get started. But before we do, just know that I'm going to be giving away every last spoiler in this film. So if you care about that, if you haven't seen the movie, maybe skip this video. But if not, if you're in for the ride, then let's talk about all the plot holes in the movie Old. Also, I might get a little heated in this because some of this is a little absurd, but this is just a video for fun. It's not too serious. Don't take it too seriously. Let us begin. Okay, so the movie Old is an M. Night Shyamalan movie about a resort who invites people to a specific island where they age progressively. It has to do with the magnetized rocks that surround the area, which makes your cells progress. 30 minutes equals 1 year. So every 30 minutes, you are 1 year older, meaning every hour, you are 2 years older. Okay, let's get started. We're just gonna jump around. I have a lot to say. Let's talk about one that actually really bothers me, the hair. So they explain why nobody's hair grows because they say that the island must not affect the dead cells. That is why their hairs and their nails don't get longer, but they do continue to age. However, when there's a dead body, it does affect the hair and the nails because everything on the body disintegrates and turns to dust. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say like, oh, well, it doesn't affect dead cells, but then it affects the dead cells. That doesn't make any sense. So either it does affect everything, or it doesn't affect dead cells and the dead bodies therefore wouldn't age past the time that they died. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And the way that they go out of the way to explain it, because honestly, if I would have just watched the film, I probably wouldn't have even thought about the hair and the nails. Maybe afterwards in retrospect when I was looking back at the film. But the fact that they go out of their way to explain it and then just disregard it by dead things still being affected by the island, I don't understand. The next thing I want to talk about is the tumor. So in the film, a woman gets a tumor. After a few hours have passed, it gets larger and larger, she faints, and it needs to be surgically removed immediately. Now, I will admit, I do get a little bit confused with the idea of time versus the idea of just their cells accelerating. So correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm intertwining the two. However, if their cells accelerate quickly, let's say the operation takes like 5 or 10 minutes, right? That's, I don't know, math, some amount of time, more than 5 or 10 minutes. How are you telling me that 10 people's dirty fucking hands in this girl's wound will not give her a bacterial infection? Now, wait, because I know what you're thinking. Well, the environment could be sterile. There are no fish. And hey, maybe that is the case. However, the human skin, I fucking Googled it. Let me find my phone. Our hands carry on average 32,000 different germs belonging to more than 150 species. That's a lot of germs. And I just, doesn't make sense to me that you walk into this environment and all of a sudden all the germs on your body disappear. We are made up of more germ cells than human cells. Isn't that right? And not only that, but the wound is open for that long, that has to cause some issues. You can't just wake up from that and be fine. I don't know. The next thing, let's talk about the food. The food is specifically wrapped in this like tinfoil metallic-y wrapping. Now, the only thing that rationally makes sense in my head is that they are trying to prevent the island from affecting the food and rotting quickly, and that's why it's wrapped in that metallic capsule. Otherwise, it would just be in like a normal thing. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into this because the boy does say at the end when they try to figure out a way to stop it, if they had some sort of metallic shield, they would be shielded from the effects of the island. I believe that the food is being protected from the effects of the island by this metallic wrapping. If that is the case, one, why do they not make a suit out of it and wrap themselves in it? And two, if that is the case, why would the food rot if the environment doesn't affect things that are not living? Because like the utensils are rusty that are left on the beach, which could make sense. We have no idea how long the people have been doing these sort of experiments. So like that could make sense that it's rusty, and plus it's by the beach and it's oxidized and blah, 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 whatever. Or am I just reading too much into it, and is the food just being prepared to be kept cold? I don't know. That is, I guess, a question left up to you. But I believe that if I were on the island, I would make a suit out of whatever that food was wrapped in. Let's continue. Now, this is one that I found that I thought was an issue. But the second time I watched it, I changed my mind and I don't think it's an issue, but I still want to bring it up because maybe you've thought the same thing. They find a solution, right? One of the men says, well, if we walk very slowly through these caverns, the way that they explain it is they say it's like being at the bottom of the ocean, and so the pressure gets to your head and you end up fainting and you can't leave the effects of these rocks, right? So they're like, what if you walk slowly to get out? You know, that should work. However, who wants to give up 20 years of their life walking slowly to get out of here? And then he goes, a dead body washes up from the ocean because anytime we try to escape, we faint. I think I'm gonna swim for it instead. But I think it does kind of make sense and tie in with the whole theme of the movie, so I'm gonna come back to that point. Keep that in your noggins. Next up, this is probably the biggest blaring issue, is that the man mid-sized sedan is on the beach at sunrise. So the people have their breakfast, they don't get to the beach till, I'm assuming 9, 10-ish, I don't know, that's just a guess, it could be earlier, but mid-sized sedan is there at sunrise, which is like 6, 7 a.m., I don't know, I'm again guessing. I don't know where this place is located or anything, so I could be completely off, but that man is on the beach hours before anyone else. And not only is he there and doesn't seem to age by the time that he dies toward the end of the film, but the little girl recognizes him. She is 11 years old. She doesn't say, that man looks like mid-sized sedan. She doesn't say like, oh, that looks like mid-sized sedan's father. I don't know if he would have aged that much by the time that she sees him, but you get the point. Now, I'm not saying every little child is as stupid as I was. When I was younger, I was confused because I thought Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus were two different people because the wig really threw me off, okay? I'm just saying little kids don't have that ability to recognize somebody as an older version. I think that this is a blinding issue in the film. And also, I know that it is sunrise because I paid attention the second time watching it, and the next day when it is sunrise, it does rise behind the rock. So it is sunrise. This one is kind of like, maybe I'm nitpicking here, but the lack of water consumption is just so beyond ridiculous. They really emphasize how desperately the kids need to eat. They don't talk about the parents eating. I'm assuming everybody ate or else they would have died. But the water thing really does bother me. I think it would have been cool, and this is like kind of my issue with the whole film, right? Is that it's the lack of commitment. You have such a cool concept, grow the hair out, make the nails longer, like commit to the role. I know that that probably isn't feasible and I understand that. However, I think it would have been cool the first time, the first like 5-10 minutes on the beach, they're like, oh man, I'm so thirsty. Like just like little things here and there, or big jugs of water being brought in, just something to kind of explain this away. I understand it, but if something like this were talked about, like the fact that the food is so emphasized and water is just a non-issue, it just makes me feel like there's lack of commitment there. Okay. We also do find that the pressure is there obviously when they leave, but not when they arrive, which also doesn't make sense if we're keeping that like deep sea theory going, because to go down to the deep sea, you would need to acclimate and it would be the same effects as well. But that is something that I can just accept the fact that, I don't know, it doesn't affect you until you're through the rock or something, whatever. Another thing that I want to touch on is that the woman's body doesn't change when she passes away in the water. But I feel like this also could be explained if her body was pulled out away from the island, so the effects didn't affect her until she comes back onto the land. That could explain that away. So that I don't think is a huge plot hole. Oh, another question my husband had, which I don't know if I fully agree with him, but he did ask why Mid-Sedan dies after getting stabbed. And he's like, wouldn't his wounds just heal? And I thought about that and I'm like, I don't know. Like if you get stabbed in the heart, would your heart muscle just fix itself? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So that is a question for you. Would he have just automatically healed? I know that, you know, obviously the little minor cuts and stuff heal quickly, but something with internal organs and stuff like that, would that be a little bit more challenging to heal? Oh, let's talk about this. They go through so much explanation on how nobody will find the families because they picked them up from the airport, they won this prize, this like all paid for vacation, nobody knows where they are, they have their passports. You're telling me that if a family wins a full paid for vacation, that they're not going to tell their family where they're going? They're not going to even say like, oh, I won this vacation online. Nobody has proof of this? That just seems a little unrealistic. And I understand maybe they can't connect the crimes yet. Maybe there haven't been that many. There's like 74 trials times 5 or 6 families each. It seems like a lot of people to go missing and nobody figure out. But, you know, that's okay. That's okay. We'll move on. They may be all from different countries, different places, you know, but most of them have had American accents. So I'm just saying that most of them are from America. I just think that that might be a plot hole. Oh, and then the last thing, this isn't a plot hole. This is just, I guess now we'll transition into like my least favorite things of the film. One thing that really bothered me is that the 11-year-old girl, when she's older, talks like she's 4 years old. And the blonde girl, who is 4 years old when they arrive, talks normally. That bothered me. I understand that the young boy is a lot more articulate than his sister is, but that it just didn't explain why she acts like she's 4 years old like the entire time on the island. So that's not a plot hole, just bothered me. Now let's talk about my least favorite things of the film, and then we're going to talk about why I actually like this. I know this sounds like I don't like this film, but I actually really do. But let's talk first about mental illness. You guys know I don't like films, I don't like horror specifically that spreads the misconception that mental illness is dangerous. I'm just so over the trope. I just think it's such a cop-out. And the fact that the man had schizophrenia and then ends up just stabbing people at random and killing people, it's just, I think it's so absurd. I thought he had Alzheimer's or dementia. I don't know the difference between the two, but I thought that he did have one of those degenerative, like early onset degenerative issues, and I actually enjoyed that. Not saying that that necessarily makes it any better. I don't know that that's not a dangerous misconception to spew as well. However, I thought that it made sense that he felt threatened, he was scared, he was confused, and so the whole time I was like, oh, he's got dementia or something. And then they're like, oh, he's got schizophrenia, and you're like, yeah, of course he does, because it's a horror movie, and you guys are terrible. And then the other thing that really bothered me was the tetanus scene. Okay, so there's a scene where one of the woman's like protecting her husband, the doctor who has schizophrenia, is just slashing him with a knife or something, and she stabs him with a rusty knife. First of all, when you're trying to protect yourself and you stab someone, are you gonna sit back and be like, this is why you are turning into the Hulk? It's because that knife is rusty, sir, and because that knife is rusty, it's gonna get in your bloodstream, it's gonna act like poison, and you're gonna die and look like you're turning into a superhero. Just the exposition of that scene bothered me, but the actual also like effects of, I'm assuming it was tetanus because she's talking about rust, okay? And if it was, first thing I Googled is rust poisonous in the bloodstream, and this is what comes up. It says, rust doesn't give you tetanus. By the way, took 2 seconds to Google, okay? And maybe this wasn't the intention, maybe it wasn't tetanus, I don't know. But it says, tetanus, or lockjaw, is a bacterial infection caused by Clostridium tetani, an extremely hardy rod-shaped bacterium found in animal digestive tracts and soils worldwide. Tetanus is fatal in about 10% of cases, but causes muscle spasms, fever, and trouble swallowing in all cases. The reason we associate tetanus with rust is because it's often found in the soil that's rich in organic materials like manure or dead leaves. Old houses, car, or discarded items left in nature for long enough will rust if they're metal and collect bacteria like the tetanus bacteria, but the relationship between rust and tetanus causing bacteria is purely correlation, not causation. 2 things here. One, Google. Just Google and again, maybe it's not rust, maybe it's not tetanus, maybe I'm misconstruing what his idea was, but that is the very first thing that came up when I Googled it. So if that is his case, either you are incorrect because it is not the rust that causes it, it's the soil that the rusted objects are often in. And second of all, it's a bacteria, tetanus, meaning that the environment is not sterile. So it's one way or the other. Do you get what I'm saying? Like there's just too much conflicting things. That's what really has made my blood boil watching this film. There's just too much. There's too much. It's just too much. Okay. those are my issues, my least favorite things. Let's talk about why I actually like this film. First, let me talk about what I think like the moral of the story to me is. At the beginning, the mother says, "Stop wishing away this moment." And for me, the whole film is just a metaphor for always trying to find something better, always looking for the present or the past in some cases of these characters, and never just being happy where you are. That, I think, is a huge takeaway from this film and something that I really love. Now, this film maybe hit me in a different way because my mom used to say that to me all the time. She used to say, "Don't wish your life away." Every time that I would make a comment like, "Oh, I wish this or that," you know. My mom passed away 8 years ago from cancer, and so a lot of this movie, you know, like the illness, the tumors, the living in the present moment, a lot of it just kind of like hit close to home. So I actually really did like the film. I really liked the meaning of it, like the meaning for me, and it actually did make me think a lot. The week after I watched it, I was walking the dogs and it was like 85. It was before LA had cooled off, and I kept going, man, I just can't wait for it to get cold. 2 more days, 3 more days, however many days it was. And then it'll finally be cold. Then I can take my dogs on like midday walks for a few miles, which is what I like doing, but summers it's just too hot out here. And I stopped myself and I was like, no, appreciate this moment, you know, enjoy the warm weather while it's here. LA doesn't really ever get that cold, but go sit by the pool, read a book, do something outside instead of looking for the things that you don't have. Just enjoy what you have. And so it really did make me think more about the things that I was saying and doing, and actually just taking a step back and enjoying the moment. And I really like that. I mean, movies that are on my mind that make me actually think, give me a little bit of an existential crisis, I'm not gonna lie, but make me think for a week, 2 weeks afterwards, I really enjoy that. So for that reason alone, I really did like the film. But there are other things that I liked from it too. Oh, my favorite part of the movie is the man who's schizophrenic, the doctor. He's talking to his mom and he's like holding her bones, like rubbing her bones on him. Like, "Oh, Mom, I don't know what to do." It was my favorite scene. That scene was fantastic. A little morbid, but pretty funny. Okay, now let's talk about the unwillingness to give up the 20 years to get through. I think that this actually makes sense because instead of they have a plan, they have a solution, instead of wasting 20 years of their life, they don't want to do that. They're looking too far in the future. They're not worried about the right now. So they're willing to risk their lives, which they obviously don't realize that they're doing, but they are. They do. They risk their lives. All of them die except for 2 of them who end up getting away at the end, but they risk their lives in order to not spare themselves 20 years. So I think actually, where I thought that was a plot hole the first time I watched it, I thought it actually made a lot of sense the second time I watched it. Another thing I want to say is mid-sized sedan's bloody nose. I didn't understand this the first time. The second time around, it's a side effect from the medication. Brilliant. Loved that. I thought that that was actually really cool. I liked the characters, the actuary, the psychologist, the lady that you know, looks at bones in the museum. I liked their behavior, the things that they said. I felt like they were well-defined characters in themselves. I really liked the long shots of each of them during the action scenes. And honestly, like the placement of each character and the movements of each character, like that's an art form in itself. And I thought that was really fucking impressive in this film, regardless of what you think about it. And if you can't have that suspension of disbelief going into it, I understand why you wouldn't enjoy the film. But if you can just kind of accept it and go along for the ride, I think looking at things like that, the dialogue in the beginning, everything is about age, time. It's very, very interesting if you step back and look at it from that perspective. And so for those reasons, I really did like the film. Oh, 2 more things. One is that I feel like the ending kind of adds an additional moral dilemma on top of what I found to be the main meaning of the film. Meaning, these people are trying to do good, and is it worth risking 10, 12 people's lives if you can save 100,000? So it is an interesting kind of add-on. However, I feel like it is kind of disconnected from what I thought the main point of the film is. Maybe you guys can find a way to connect them for me, or maybe the plot and the film mean something different to you. Let me know. But for me, it just seemed very disconnected from how I felt. Honestly, if everyone died on the island, I think I would have liked the film a little bit better. I think it would have sunk in a little bit more, like those thoughts of, you know, your own mortality and appreciating the now and things like that. But it is also interesting to consider that moral dilemma as well. And now that it's shut down, it's like, well, is it a good thing that it's shut down? Yes, these people's lives were ruined, but also for the greater good of other people. I did hear one person say like, well, they didn't cure epilepsy because she only had not had seizures for 16 years, but she only had 1 dose. She only had 1 drink in the beginning. So I think that the idea of that is if you've had continual doses of it, it would eventually cure it. And then one other thing that I've already forgot, oh yes, is that there were 73 trials beforehand, or that was the 73rd trial, which means that there should technically be 72 other people that have gone through this on the beach, families or what have you, which means that technically there should be 72 other boxes of food and the material that held the food, if I'm right about the material being metallic and making the food not mold or rot, then there should be 72 of those somewhere, and if they were to dig, they probably would have enough reinforcements to make suits out of them all. That is just my hypothesis. I don't know if that was the intention, but other than that, I think we've covered everything, ladies and gentlemen. I think so. I don't know. Am I thinking too into this? Do you guys like the film? Can you guys just kind of ignore everything and accept the film for what it is and enjoy it? Did you guys have issues like me? Also, there is a book of this, and I am going to be doing a movieverse book, so stay tuned for that. So the movieverse book will be next week, the week after, so keep an eye out for that. Let me know how you guys feel about this film. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys!